Welcome to the Business Blox podcast. I'm Chris Manser.
I'm Dale. Here we are again. We're talking about the latest business news and everything that's going on in the world.
And what's been happening?
Well, not a lot of changes. Things are sort of dying down a bit now. It's just year-end tax planning sort of changes, looking at what's going to happen to people. What changes we need to make. The only sort of thing of note that we sort of need to talk about is the federal court case. Was it federal? No, it could be. I'm not sure. There's a court case that dealt with casuals and the definition of what a casual was that's thrown a big spanner in the works and created a lot of uncertainty around casual contracts. Other than that, things are opening up. Footy was playing again this weekend, which was good.
Bulldogs hopefully should start in the next few weeks. They're still They're still locked down, unfortunately. But if they can wake up at some point. It seemed just amazing.
They're still celebrating that grand final win.
Yeah, between Melbourne trying the hardest to lose it. I think they were 47 points up, and they managed to give all that away. And the Bulldogs paid 5 minutes, the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, can only get better from here.
Yeah, exactly. And they might actually start letting fans in very shortly as well.
They are rolling back the lockdown things very quickly. I know they're opening up. They're opening up pubs on the 22nd, so you can go in and have a beer. They are opening up. They're opening up gyms and other things like that, but there's it's 4 square meter rule where everyone has to remain 4 square meters apart, which is basically your 1.5 meters around. So how people navigate that will be interesting, and then I think we go to a full open up probably about a month after that. So we are heading back. Zombie companies, that's another thing we've got to talk about.
Yeah.
Have we been creating a bunch of companies that are just living on the JobKeeper? There was a study done. I can't remember who it was. Probably not that reputable, but they were saying that there was as much as 70% of businesses who admitted that in the past year that they were having to cut corners or cut spending in order to just keep their businesses going. So they're sort of saying, well, if a lot of people are running that close to the edge, what difference, a small drop in the economy is going to make a big difference.
Okay, and just to confirm, so a zombie company is unprofitable company, or?
Well, it's Walking Dead basically. So it's a company that had died once the COVID had come into place, and they know that the company's not working. They did remove all the insolvent trading terms out of the corporate regulations, I think it was. So that's to say it used to be a crime to trade in a company if you knew you couldn't pay all of your bills. So they removed that at the start of COVID. So even if you know you were going to go under, you can continue to trade and there's no personal ramifications. So zombie companies are companies who know that there is no way out of this. They know that the continuing isn't going to change anything, but they're just here to get the JobKeeper for the next month or 2 months.
Yeah,
2.5 months. So yeah, the reckoning will be at the end of September, as we've sort of always alluded to. You may see a few other businesses sort of drop out a little bit earlier and just sort of say, it's really not worth the effort for a couple more weeks. But then they're saying that the small businesses will really start to hit in hard in the October months, or the October quarter.
I just wanted to also remind people that if you are, business is starting to pick up and income is coming in, you won't be affected with your JobKeeper payments. They'll continue. And It's just, if you can continue to bring in more income is good news, and the JobKeeper will continue to support you. You won't be falling eligible at any point.
As at the 18th of June.
Yes, yeah.
So
regulations.
Yeah. So that may change. That they're saying that it won't, but wait and see. So, but yeah, everyone is going well. I think a lot of people the people are saying, do we really need this JobKeeper? Because they sort of seem to have bounced back to a comfortable level. There still are a few people who need the support, but nowhere near the number of people who are claiming the support, which is interesting. Yeah. So, it'd be interesting to see. I think we've gone a little shallower in the short term in net economic effect. We're getting back to the macros again. Is America going to go into a second round of COVID? Their numbers seem to be increasing at a faster rate. So we may see that they're opening up before they need to. They didn't get down to the numbers. Does that have an effect on our economy? And then does that then shock the world into realizing this wasn't a one-off event? This is going to drag on for months and months and months.
Yeah.
I think that may be the case. They're opening up a little bit too quick, considering to how conservative Australia has been, especially with Victoria. I know New South Wales and Queensland are opening up a bit faster than Victoria, but they're really pressing home the fact that we want the numbers down to as close to zero as we can before we start opening up, because that way we won't have to close down again. Because I think the idea of closing down again, there's no coming back from that. So there's no plan 2 in all of this. I don't think it's all.
The closing down is not possible. I'm more glass half full though. I think maybe vaccine comes down the track, and I think US is in a lot better position than necessarily it's being talked about. The virus has to wash through everywhere, and it just hasn't got to certain states, which it's washing through a bit now. To see the spikes and things. But if you look at the main epicenters in New York and things like that, they've really dropped away with no spikes. It's states that hadn't seen the initial spikes now are getting it, and it's sort of just going to wash through like it's washing through the world.
I hope so. I don't want to go through this again. I think it's been a learning curve for everyone, and it's time to get back to business.
Yeah. Hopefully
back to making money.
Doesn't set a precedent. That's the main thing.
No, enough of the charity. Let's get back to work.
Yeah, exactly. So you touched on casual employees.
Yes. So there was a court case to do with a mining employment company and one of its casual employees. They clearly defined the employee as casual in the contract. He was only working short contracts, some as short as 6 months, some as long as 12 months. He worked a number of different contracts over a period of time at different places for this company, so different mines all around the place. So he wasn't built into a fixed place of employment. He was deemed to be a full-time employee because he had received regular and predictable employment. So the fact that he could predict his employment, and these was different circumstances where he could predict his employment up to 12 months in advance. So the court has come and said that if you have planned employment that continues, they didn't give a period to say what it was, then you are deemed a full-time employee. It doesn't matter that both parties agree to the fact that you are a casual in the agreement. So he signed multiple contracts on multiple occasions saying, I am a casual employee. I forego, it actually said in the contracts, I forego my leave entitlement in compensation for a 25% additional payment. So everything was done by the book. Everything was well understood, but he was able to turn around and say that he was a full-time employee. Now, he worked for 3.5 years, so they have to now back pay 3.5 years annual leave, public holidays, and all of that. And they can't use the money that they said was the additional 25% as compensation for the additional monies he's going to receive. It's created a big storm in Victoria, whereas people aren't sure now what the definition of a casual is. It's created such a major storm that the federal government is looking to legislate in the next 6 months to redefine the term of a casual, or to say that if someone chooses to work as a casual, which happens a lot, and they make the ongoing declaration that they want to remain a casual, that they have no rights to come back and then say, I want to be back paid annual leave. Yeah, it was very interesting. I think a few of the points that should have been taken out of that is in order for businesses who currently have long-term casuals on their books and who are wondering if they are deemed to be a long-term casual, they need to consider, do they have regular hours that's easily identifiable, and how long does that roster go out for? So if someone is working 8 hours a day, not on a roster, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it's week in, week out, and there's no roster, and there's no sort of way that fluctuates, then you may have yourself a full-time employee. There is a question on whether businesses at the moment should go to that employee and say, let's put you onto a full-time contract, because then they may say, well, what's going on here? Let's go back and claim all those additional years. So, you know, if there's a 5-year casual that's suddenly going on to a permanent contract, they may start to ask questions, and those questions may lead to a claim. So what we're sort of suggesting to people is you wait till wage time, and then you suggest to them that you know, saying they've been around for such a long time. Now, these are people with very specific circumstances. So casuals with systematic ongoing employment that doesn't vary, which is sort of what we're talking about, but consult your accountant or your advisors about what's right in the situation. Those people, you can then ask them to go on a full-time contract. If they refuse to, you just say to them, that's fine, here's a letter, let's agree to continue you on as a casual. And you would also get a clause written into the contract that says the amount that we compensate you for paying for your annual leave and your public holidays, in the event of a claim for a claim of that back, that money gets offset. So that was another thing that came out of this court case, is that even though it was defined that the 25% additional payment was for annual leave and for foregoing annual leave and foregoing public holidays, they couldn't use that money to offset it. They just said bad luck. So if it's written in the contract, it gives people more of a chance to claim against it. At the moment, it's sort of early days, so we're sort of not jumping and making huge changes. We hope to see reform in the next 6 months, so by the end of the year. But if we don't, then we have to do some serious looking at who's a casual and who's not a casual, and long-term casuals can't be kept on casual contracts if there's no reform that's brought into this area.
Right, so it's a lot to take in. So
yes,
we've got many customers with casuals and full-time employees. The takeaway, I think, is that coming the end of the financial year, now's maybe a good time to review the situations of each employee, not necessarily act on it, but start to get an understanding that potentially these casuals, if they have been a long-term and systematic, there could be changes there, and looking at and preparing a document, or even having the conversation if it's a good chance to move them to full-time, using the idea around end of the financial year, start of a new year.
Yeah, identify, talk to your advisors, and then work out a plan about dealing with them. It is a big issue. It's been noticed by the federal government, so it's something that they are aware of, and discussion is that it will be corrected, because it was such a jarring shift away from the definition of a casual. And for a company that did everything right, they paid them the right rates, they advised them about it early. It just seems to have muddied the waters around that. So definitely have the discussions with people, work out a softly approach.
Yeah, exactly. Using this period as a good cover. And also another thing that moving towards the end of the financial years, this is the busiest time we find for customers wanting to migrate accounting softwares or even begin using accounting softwares that's previously had the old shoebox receipt method or Excel calculations. What can you sort of talk about how you go about finding the right software, and at what time do you sort of move into that area? What time is the business cycle?
So you want to be hitting new software at the 1st of July. So you want to make a hard shift from the old software to the new software, and that's just so that the reporting requirements are you'll have a full year's worth of figures in the new system. There are ways in which you can put previous year's information into accounting programs, but we generally don't go down that path. You can splice together a lot of reports quite easily these days. So the time you spend in looking at historical data going back 3 or 4 years, half the time you don't really need it. You can just print off the reports in the old system and just tack on the new stuff. So what was the question?
So around when should you move? At what stage? So say I've got a business, I earn 60, 70,000 a year. I want to keep my costs down, but do I start to move to account? Do I spend the $50 a month, or do I try to continue with free software or Excel? What's your opinion around?
There's a lot of different instances where people make it work. The hard thing is depends on your skills. It depends on the abilities of the people who are running it. Generally, with someone who doesn't have a lot of experience in accounting, who doesn't have a lot of Excel experience, who doesn't put the time into really allocating an Excel file properly, I'd say the sooner you can get away from it, the better. Even once you start earning, say, $70,000 to $80,000, you can get, I'd say move on to that free software first, which is the software that we offer.
Yeah.
So it's a software where you can just import the information into the system, allocate it to accounts. The issue comes, and it always comes with people who don't have the experience to allocate things properly, so they just sort of mash it until it works. It's sort of a fine line. As soon as you can afford it, you can afford it, sort of thing. I'd like to see anyone who's sort of on 100 plus to sort of start looking at moving to either someone to do their bookkeeping or someone to run their accounting systems. If you're serious long-term about business, it's not just a job. So it's not just you working through a company. So let's just say that you just work for, let's say you work for a builder, and he's the only builder you work for. You just invoice him, only the one person. You've got the same sort of expenses. You're running as a sole trader. That sort of scenario, I could say that you really don't need to move, because it's not really a business. It's just you working for somebody through a different structure. Anything that's to do with invoicing, managing money, tracking expenses that start to get bigger, that you're trying to grow. So when you generally work for one person, you're governed by what they do. You don't grow the business yourself. So anything that you're sort of working with multiple people trying to grow the business, it's better that you spend more of your time growing the business than it is that you spend time actually doing the bookkeeping work. So as soon as you're able to, and you can get cheaper packages, you should move away from it. I've seen the husband and wife duo work 30% of the time. There are instances where the wife does do the job very well, and that they're at home. So look, yes, yeah, I don't think I've seen that, but we're equal opportunists. No, I have. Yep, I think we did have one sort of case. So it's sort of that the case where the spouse is helping you out in the business. It There are certain instances where I have seen it work and where it has worked well, and they're still providing detailed Excel spreadsheets for multiple rentals. A business that does a couple of 100,000, but they put a lot of time and allocation into it, and it's a very detailed file, but it's also summarized very well. So it's got everything that you're going to get out of an accounting system. It probably takes them a lot longer to do it than it would through an online system. But I would say because of the time, they've been doing it for a long, long time, they're very comfortable with that. So, in that instance, it does work. But, really, what are you going to get? You probably get a system for, say, $30 a month. So what's that? $360 a year. You should be able to save a lot of time these days by working with these systems. They're not as clunky or as hard as they used to be, and there's a lot of online training if you really want to go down that path. So you should be able to pick up and get into a system quite easily. The next step then is to get someone professional to do it, who will then probably change the way things are allocated. They'd notice the things that are missing, and you don't have that fix up at the end of the year. So we generally find that when people do their own files, there's usually sort of $300 worth of fix ups at the end of the year. So is it really worthwhile them doing the file where we could just knock it out? Yeah. Then you start to get regular advice as you start to move into someone else to get it. You start to get, as the business grows, as you understand that you shouldn't be working in that area as much, you should move out of it. And that's the only way you can really grow a business. But yeah, as I said, if you're just going to be a small business that's going to contract for one person, there's a varying bunch of scenarios that you can make work, to get the systems.
Yeah, so it seems to be there's two clear questions. Firstly is, what's the next 12, 18 months look like for your business? If you're expecting to grow, jump and be needing employees and etc., you might as well get on the system at the beginning, get onto it now, and when you get 18 months down the track and you've got employees, you can easily add them into the system, as opposed to migrating from a system that doesn't have employees over to a new one. And it saves all that hassle. And then the second question is, at what level of understanding and input do you want to have on the file? Do you want to hand it off to someone like accountant and bookkeeper, or do you want to try and learn and run the whole process yourself? And if it is really worthwhile.
I think the thing that people have trouble understanding is that the more money that we get in relation to a certain client, the more help that we give them and the better the result is. So a lot of people try and do a lot of the things themselves. You're probably slowing down a lot of so you slow down the way that the business can grow by not having someone you can consult with and sort of bounce ideas off. And you end up struggling through a lot of issues that never really get resolved properly. Whereas if you had a professional doing it, it gets fixed and moved on. So it's like if you fix your own car or you get a mechanic to fix your car, they'll come in, they'll fix 5 other issues with the car. It's going to get done properly. It's going to get done quicker, but you do have to pay for the privilege. It's the same thing with accountants. The more you can get them to do, they can soup up your car, they can build the engine up, they can detail the inside. So there's a bunch of different things you can sort of get people to do. But, the first things first is the car. So it is hard for people to get out of that mindset. I think the people that do have the mindset on, I need to get in professionals to help me and advise me, they do a lot better, because I don't know everything. Maybe you know everything, but there's a lot that you can learn from everybody, and the more people you ask about things, the better the result.
Yeah, exactly. So then on next week's episode, you wanted to run through the 2 main reports that come out of the accounting software, the balance sheet and the profit and loss, and sort of explain the key aspects of that and how they work, just to help with people's understanding and education.
Yeah, getting people familiar. And so the issue that we find with customers is that we'll put together this, this great presentation, and they really don't have a clue what we're talking about. So I think that comes down to that they don't fundamentally understand profit and loss, balance sheets, cash flows, or it's just sort of giving them the background knowledge to sort of what we have behind them and sort of how we understand it. So, yeah, I mean, use the car analogy again. I can look at an engine and you can look at an engine and we see two different things. So if you have a deeper understanding of how it operates, you sort of understand where, if this is sort of, if something is going wrong here, it's a result of this, or if I fix this area, it's going to fix up this. It just sort of, keeping it very basic, because it is, it takes years and years of understanding to sort of get a good grasp or a good feel. So you can feel these sort of things and understand how they work. So I just want to slowly build up people's understanding. We'll start with profit and loss. We'll start with balance sheet. We may do cash flow. We may even do cash flow as its own thing. And then, we could also touch on when you should use cash flow, Yeah, but that's the place we need to start.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sounds good. We'll identify the key lines and sort of simplify it, so you can pick out one or two things in the profit and loss and be able to make it useful. Even if you just focus on one or two aspects of it, and at least you can get a good understanding with that.
Don't be scared of it. That's the goal of this. That was our original goal. And then the conversations that we have are, they're higher level conversations rather than the basic understandings of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Cool.
It was good to chat with you.
Thanks,
Dale.
Chris.
We'll see you next week.
Have a good week. I'll see you at the footy.
Yeah, sounds good. See ya.
Thanks, mate. See you, mate.